Hi, you guys. I had to follow up on the Ananias and Paul story in the ministry of letting go, and really the ministry of you planting a seed, leaving another waters, leaving, and God asked the increase, and that's First Corinthians 3:6 through 7. In that, Paul is letting the church of Corinth know not to follow one person. And I started thinking, about the story of Ananias and Paul. And I'm talking about the Ananias of Acts 9. There are a couple of others that's in the Bible. The one who lied about the money that they spent, him and his wife died. And then the other one is like one who was all for the Roman Empire. And so Jewish people, killed him. This Ananias of Acts 9, not Acts 5 or Acts 23, but Acts 9. And yes, your girl did your research. He was a minister. He was a disciple of Jesus. He went around telling those of Damascus. He was called to the Damascus area and he was ministering to them, letting them know that Jesus is Christ. Now, when he finally walks in obedience, go lay his hands on Paul, Paul is able to go do something else. Really Jesus planted the seed. And Ananias watered that seed with laying hands and getting his vision back. Even though I do believe, Jesus took that vision away. He gave sight to blind all the time. He could have did that, but it was a purpose in showing Ananias' obedience. It was showing Paul, like, when I tell you to go do something, when I send you somewhere, you walk in that obedience, you do it. And so in that, God sends people to you, but you don't stay with them. And let's talk about what happened to Ananias. If Paul would have been like, oh my God, God sent you to me. You are my spiritual father now. I need to walk with you. Not saying that God doesn't do that, but he wasn't doing that for Paul. Paul was a very smart man. He knew the word, like he knew scripture. He just didn't believe Jesus was the manifestation of God on earth. Anyways, if Paul would have decided to stay with Ananias, he goes back to preaching in Damascus as he was called to do. And he gets captured by this dude named Luciana, some Roman governor. And the Roman governor is anti of Christ. And he wants Ananias to deny Jesus is the Messiah. And he tortures him 3 different times. He tortures him by beating him with an ox whip. He then says, take it back. And I says, nah, fam, that ain't what I'm doing. Then he scrapes his sides with fire, baby. And even in that, Ananias is like, I'm not giving up. Jesus is real. And so then finally, he was like, I'll give you one more time. And that's what Luciana says to Ananias. Ananias is like, you can miss me. So Luciana stones him, take him out of the city gates and have him stoned to death. He dies, and if Paul would have stayed there with Ananias, he would have died. Paul ain't had no problem going to prison, baby. As we know with Paul and Timothy, and he have no problem letting people know Jesus is real as he starts 14 different churches and does a ministry from Rome to Asia, minor Asia, because he wanted to go more deep into Asia. But again, walking in obedience, that ain't where he was called to be. That was Thomas's calling. Thomas goes to India. But my point is that there's a reason why God calls people to your life, and then they out. You're not meant to walk together. And we have to accept that as children of Christ. And if they're meant to come back into your life, they will. God will place them on that path to do so. Timothy and Paul, they went in and out together. Paul had Apollo, Paul had Phoebe, Paul had God, I can't think of the other lady. Dang, Priscilla. There were so many people that Paul touched that came in and out of his life, and he went back and visited the churches in Greece, and he had all these different kind of disciples himself, people that he went out and basically was their spiritual father and so called them spiritual sons. They were meant to walk together, and thank God for those who you are meant to walk together with. There is such a camaraderie there. But I'm sure there was a special place in Paul's heart for Ananias, who was obedient. There's a special place in Paul's heart for even the disciples when he comes and he meets up with them in Acts, and they why he here? And and he felt some kind of way, Paul did, because he was like, y'all found Jesus first, I'm lesser of you. And he had to change how he saw himself, and eventually that came through walking in obedience and who God called you to be. So I just had to say that, because he could have tried to stay with the disciples and everything, and he would have been walking out of what God had for him. And Paul writes the whole, well, majority of the New Testament. He starts all these churches and all these ministries, and he gave guidance, starting other people's ministries. So yeah, anyways, baby, don't be afraid to let people go. Especially when you realizing that you guys are called to different things, that you honor different things, that you value different things. Doesn't mean what they value is wrong or what you value is wrong. It's just that there's a different calling. Doesn't mean one is greater than another, because I'm sure Ananias did some great things and he was willing to die for God just like Paul was. We just have to be okay with walking in obedience. All right, so that's it. You guys be blessed. Again, happy Wednesday.